The Legend of Dragoon during its inception was known by some as Sony's Final Fantasy killer. It clearly did not take down the fantasy giant, and it hangs in the shadow of 7 still to this day, despite coming out years after. The comparisons are not without warrant, given the first discs of the two games have a little too much in common with one another. Both parties chase a man in black around the world, the need to pass an area guarded by a giant snake, and a disc 1 death that hits anyone with feelings with a watery eye, to name a few. The marketing for Dragoon was also off the mark at times, and depicted this game as a lighthearted romp of silliness instead of the epic story of war, friendship, and struggle that it actually was.
Nigel, he cut my head off! Did you see that? He cut my head off!
What a wuss.
Now playing on PlayStation, rated T for teens.
PlayStation.
Well, not without its shortcomings, which game isn't, I think Dragoon deserves a spot much higher on many JRPG lovers' lists of all-time greats, along with the likes of Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Trigger, or Suikoden 2. The Legend of Dragoon was originally released on the Sony PlayStation in Japan on December 2nd, 1999, North America on June 13th, 2000, and finally in Europe on January 19th, 2001. It was also later re-released on the PS3 as a PS1 classic, and more recently on the PlayStation 4 on February 21st, 2023, finally freeing it from its confinement on the PS1 and opening the door for players in the modern console era to actually play this fantastic JRPG without resorting to owning a physical copy, a PS3, or emulation. And there's trophies now. I didn't fully play through Dragoon until it came out on the PS4, despite many of my friends being die-hard lovers of the game from day one. I frequently saw my high school friend Naked Jake playing it when I was over at his house. He gave me the full rundown on how sweet the battle system was one day after we had finished watching the actor commentary special feature on the Dude Where's My Car DVD.
Dude, what does mine say? Sweet! What about mine?
Also, he wasn't like a nudist or anything. We were just born in the 80s where everyone had a J name like Jake, Josh, or Jen. So to differentiate you from the others, a lot of my J-named friends received nicknames. He made the high school brained decision to streak naked through his neighborhood one night, and Naked Jake was born. My friend Jimmy, another J-named lover of this game, lent me his 22-year-old strategy guide for this review.
Great Commander, this way.
So, this is her.
Dragoon starts off with a full motion video where a man holds materia up to an unconscious woman's forehead, and some soldiers on gnarly looking horses ride out of a wrecked and burning town. And there's voice acting. While nothing to write home about in the year of our Lord 2024, with voice actors like Ben Starr, Jennifer Hale, and Troy Baker, to name a small few, whispering sweet nothings in our gamer ears nowadays, the early 2000s game voice acting has a special place in my heart with its awkward charm. Anything voiced in Grandia is objectively bad by today's standard, but it not only doesn't hurt my ears, but it gives me a wave of nostalgic glee.
Mullen? What in the world is happening? Where is Lean?
Justin? Why is Fina here? Lynn couldn't have gone on alone. No, it can't be!
And so does the voice acting in The Legend of Dragoon. It may be bad, but it's also great.
Who is she?
That is not your concern.
After the FMV, we meet Dartfeld, Legend of Dragoon's main protagonist, and a man returning to his village of Seles after being away for 5 years. With the help of a mysterious woman in black armor, Dart survives a close encounter with a dragon. He then rushes to Seles after he was the focus of the soldiers' attack. Some of the soldiers remain in Seles, and that forces Dart into the first battle of the game. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to the battle system in Legend of Dragoon, but for now we're limited to attack, defend, and item commands. Every character in the game except Shauna and Miranda utilize the addition system when attacking. Additions are a combo system of timed button presses that grant a bonus when completed correctly. They grow in power as they are used and leveled up. Each character has multiple unique additions that they get to yell out when successfully landing one.
Hammer spin!
These are learned when a character reaches certain levels, and one final addition is learned by reaching the max level of 5 with all the previous ones. Early game additions are pretty easy to execute, but later ones ramp up the difficulty and make mastering them quite a challenge. There are accessories that can be procured later in the game that, when equipped, will perform the additions for you, but that's at the expense of your one and only accessory slot, so I'd say you're better off just embracing the late game struggle and learning those additions yourself. The defense command in battle does exactly what you'd think. It defends. But it also replenishes 10% of that defending character's hit points, which is helpful and generous, especially when talking about the item capacity limitation this game handicaps you with. You are limited to 32 total items that a party can carry around, which can be used in and out of battle. Now, I generally do not like item bag limitations in my games. It's one of my biggest gripes with some classic RPGs. I'm looking at you, Suikoden, and your laughably awful inventory system. If you know, you know. Between keeping a stock of curing, status healing, magic, and the extremely useful and rare reusable items, that 32 limit is hit quickly. I really disliked this item limitation early on in Dragoon, but also without this handicap I can see this game being too easy, and it's honestly not a very hard JRPG to begin with. The challenge set by limiting my on-hand items did give LOD a level of strategy that games where 99 of everything can be carried around do not. I can appreciate what the developers were going for, even though I normally frown upon the constraint. All that being said, not much strategy is needed in the first couple battles. Dart fights through the remaining Imperial troops and their commander, who are quickly taken out. Afterwards, Dart finds out his childhood friend Shauna, the girl with the materia-reacting forehead, was the one taken to Hellena Prison, so naturally, onward to Hellena for a prison break. After sneaking into prison via the inside of a traveling merchant's cart, Dart not so quietly battles through the guards in his attempt to find Shauna. At some point, Dart comes across someone who will become a great friend, Lavitz Slambert. Who's also partaking in a prison break of his own. I'm a sucker for Lancers, and it doesn't hurt that Lavitz is generally a great guy who quickly became my favorite character in the early part of the game. Lavitz as a character strives to do what is right and just. While Dart may have a couple different heartfelt rooftop moments with Shauna during their will he accept her love story, Lavitz also begins to share a brotherly connection with Dart during his time with the party. Lavitz is encouraging to Dart regarding his quest, vulnerable about his own securities regarding the state of the war they find themselves in, and his own relationship with his father. These two become a regular Sam and Dean, a bromance thicker than blood, forged in adventure.
Horror marathon on Shaku. Just made my way through the Halloweens, and now I'm about to...
Oh, wow.
What? Oh, yes, I shaved.
I mean, it's so smooth. It's like a dolphin's belly.
He also has strong additions in battle and some great magic once he acquires his Dragoon form. The pair work together to free Shauna and escape Hellena with Imperial soldiers fast on their heels. In the getaway, Lavitz is injured by an arrow and the group needs to take refuge in an old cabin to rest. After Shauna patches up Mr. Slambert, Dart explains to her why he's been gone from their village for so long. 18 years ago, a mysterious person known only to Dart as the Black Monster attacked his original hometown of Neat. This attack resulted in the destruction of Neat and the death of both of his parents. The only thing left the next morning was a memento of his father's. Dart has been out seeking the Black Monster these past 5 years on a mission of revenge, sadly returning home to Seles not only to find the village under attack, but also not anywhere closer to find out who or where the person known only as the Black Monster is. Weary about the incoming Imperial troops and the dragon that follows in their wake, Lavitz insists that the trio head to Bale and alert King Albert. He sweetens the deal by suggesting that someone at the castle may be able to assist Dart in finding out more information about the Black Monster. One lumberjacking session later, a quick boss battle against a Midgarzolum, an Ouroboros, and a weird performance of street magic by Shauna. the crew arrives in Bale, home of Lavitz and Indel's castle. Bale really shows off how great looking the pre-rendered backgrounds look in Legend of Dragoon. The big fountain on your right as you walk into town, a huge library, and Lavitz's house all look great. Later, some of the areas you get to explore are truly beautiful, and honestly, I personally don't think the characters look half bad walking around either. Sure, they're definitely PS1 sprites, but they looked really good for their time and hold up quite well almost 25 years later. Lavitz brings Dart and Shauna to meet with King Albert. Dart doesn't learn much from their meeting, but further fuel is poured onto the mystery as the Black Monster shows up in history records as far back as 11,000 years ago, just after the Dragon Campaign, a great war fought between the humans and Winglies that ravaged the world. During their audience, King Albert informs them about an impending Imperial Sandoran attack on the town of Hoax, which borders the two kingdoms. The war seems to be in full effect. Lavitz is resolute in his need to fight at the front lines and defend his country. Dart also agrees to postpone his search for the Black Monster and assist Lavitz in protecting the kingdom against the Imperial threat. Against Dart's wishes, Shauna also decides to come along and stay by Dart's side. Despite being away for 5 years, it's clear to all that Shauna is in love with him, but Dart cannot get past treating Shauna as a little sister. And I'm always rooting for love, but sometimes when you're slamming up against someone as stubborn as Dart, when it comes to accepting Shauna's feelings, you just want to shake them until it sinks in. Don't get me wrong, Dart clearly cares for Shauna and he's not dumb. He knows what's up, but at this point he's being held back from accepting her love. He's like an ice cube you put in a cold fridge to melt. It will get there, but I really wish I could just throw it in an oven at 450 to speed up the process. As the gang leaves Bale, they literally run into someone named Martel. She's looking for a collectible item called Stardust to heal her sick daughter of an illness. There are 50 in total which can be found across the whole game. You will see her in towns along the way, and you can trade any Stardust you have found to her for rewards. Collecting all 50 Stardust not only nets you some rare accessories, but is also the only way to obtain the Vanishing Stone, which is needed for you thrill seekers to be able to fight the Legend of Dragoon's secret megaboss, Faust, an endeavor I would highly encourage. The town of Hoax is in full defense mode as they await the Imperial attack. Dart and Lavitz help out the Watch, and during the night they are attacked by the Giganto Kongol for a big boy boss battle. Shauna must be sleeping since it's just Dart and Lavitz that participate in this fight, and depending on your level, this could be a tough one as Kongol looks and hits like a dump truck. As the battle ends, Dart goes for the finishing blow and... Although that definitely did not go to plan, someone from Dart's recent past shows up. Rose unlocks Dart's Dragoon form and the battle system expands to greater heights. When a character is a Dragoon, they can now use magic but can no longer use items. Some Dragoons don't have healing spells, and once you're in that form, you cannot revert back to normal human mode until the turn limit has been reached. Each character and enemy in this game also has an elemental affinity. You can easily see what that element is based on the color of the enemy's nameplate when hovering the cursor over them. Elements are paired together, being strong and weak against one another in a twisted version of rock, paper, scissors. Fire does more damage to water, but is also weak to it. Light and dark are opposing elements as well as wind and earth. Lightning is the oddball out that has no yin to its yang and is not strong or weak against any particular enemy. Why do I bring this up now? Dragoon magic is crazy strong, but a character like Haschel may not have any elemental weaknesses, but that also means he doesn't have any elemental strengths. So at times it's just a better bet to leave him in his normal form to continue as is while being able to offer up healing items if the battle starts turning south. Even though the Dragoon form has its benefits, it's not a transform to win option. You can just as easily be defeated after transforming all your characters to Dragoon form because you can't use items for 3 turns as you could from being in non-Dragoon form from a strong enemy wiping you out because you can't push out damage quick enough to finish the fight. Now with the ability to turn into a Dragoon at your fingertips, the addition system has an added feature. Every time an addition is successfully completed, the character gains SP, which replenishes the Dragoon gauge. Once 100 SP is accrued, a character is able to turn into a Dragoon for 1 turn. This SP earned also gets added to a running total that levels up your Dragoon to a max level of 5, allowing that character to be in Dragoon form longer. But beware, because longer isn't always better. At least that's what I've been told. The game ingrained in you the importance of using additions early on, and then a couple of hours later incentivized the incentive. Chef's kiss. With Kongol defeated and Hoax in shambles but safe, Dart, Lavitz, and Shauna chat up Rose. Ever enigmatic Rose talks about ancient stories and legends as if she has first-hand knowledge. She's the only Dragoon any of these people have ever seen and guides Dart in learning about what Dragoons are capable of. Her past is shrouded in mystery, and even as she travels with the party, she isn't fast to share much of her personal life. Since the game does Shauna dirty and doesn't give her additions, because apparently a bow shooting off multiple arrows or having a combo attack would be too unbelievable in a land full of dragons and magic, or why ever the design choice is made, I benched Shauna and used Rose for most of the game. Her Dragoon form has a solid healing spell that is immensely useful at this point, and she packs quite the punch in battle. There is news that the Imperials are continuing their attack elsewhere, and the green dragon Firebrand has a nest that's been spotted in a forest not far away. To ensure the safety of Basil, the crew is off to kill a dragon, but first they need to pass through the Volcano Velude. This lava-filled hellscape is home to a giant phoenix that flies above, forcing the group to take the low road right into the clutches of a Virage. You will fight a couple Virages in Dragoon, and they are tough. Rose explains Virages are a leftover vestige from the Dragon campaign 11,000 years ago, and were used by the Winglies just as humans used Dragoons. Shauna claims that it may have been calling out to her, so we can add that to the list of odd things that have happened with her so far. This was the hardest boss in Dragoon for me up to this point. The balance regarding the regular battle commands, item capacity, and newly obtained Dragoon forms start to show the complexity this battle system is going to bring for the rest of the adventure. Putting down the ancient Wingly Virage and also surviving a run-in with the aforementioned Firebird, the foursome leaves Volcano Velude and arrives in a forest where the dragon's nest is located. The only issue is that the forest is hella poisoned, and this brings me to something about Shauna's character. She is depicted as ever the victim in this game. She was abducted at the beginning of the game, she sprained her ankle on the way to Bale, she's the only one in the group who gets negatively affected by the poison in the dragon's forest. It could make sense that Rose and Dart are not affected, possibly due to their Dragoon power acting as protection, but Lavitz is not a Dragoon when you enter this forest, and he seems fine throughout. Sure, we've all met someone who constantly plays a victim or just has a lousy run at life at times, and Shauna's fragility can act as a plot device to help drive the player's view that Dart sees Shauna as a younger sister in need of his help and protection, and less like the object of his affection like she clearly wishes she could be. It turns me off from playing as her and starts to get me annoyed with her constant issues. Share the wealth of woe and show Lavitz feeling sick from the poison. He does get his Dragoon form soon, so maybe he was just sucking it up, and then he was insta-healed once he acquired his Dragoon form. But like, he's a very empathetic character that would probably tell Shauna he feels icky too, just to give her some encouragement. Maybe give Rose some relatability by perhaps wounding her and getting help from Dart. Sometimes it just seems like a convenient dogpile on Shauna, and I'd really like to like her and root for her more than pity her. The Dragoons, Lavitz, and Poison Shauna find their way to the Dragoon Firebrand's nest, where a familiar face to Lavitz awaits. Graham, who once betrayed his kingdom of Basil and Lavitz's father, leading to his death, now has the power of the Green Dragoon and Firebrand. In a typical bad guy fashion, Graham explains his backstory. He received the Dragoon spirit from the Imperial Emperor Dole, who in turn received it from Emperor Diaz, presumed dead for 11,000 years. The plot thickens. After the fight, Lavitz inherits the Dragoon spirit of the Jade Dragon from a dead Graham, and now we have a full party of super powerful Dragoons. And Shauna.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Who is now suffering immensely from the effects of the dragon's poison. The group rushes off towards the commercial town of Lohan in search of a doctor. The doctor in Lohan says something called a Dragoni plant could possibly help heal Shauna, but before the Dragoons go and hunt for some dragon grass, it's time for some shopping, and the town of Lohan is packed to the brim with some good finds. But sometimes the good finds can be hard to spot in Dragoon's towns. Looking at the screen alone, while another great-looking pre-rendered background, it's basically impossible to figure out what doors you can actually enter. Luckily, Dragoon has us covered with the option to turn on these arrows above any entrance or exit. Final Fantasy VII also did this with red arrows marking any screen change, but Dragoon goes a little further. Item and weapon shops have a blue arrow above the door, clinics and inns are marked with yellow arrows, and any other areas donated by a green arrow. This makes navigation around some of LOD's bigger towns a lot easier. While Legend of Dragoon makes navigating around towns a lot easier, it definitely makes selling items a chore. You have to sell items one at a time, going in and out of the menu and then scrolling through the item list from the top to select the next item to sell. I found myself selling extra items in towns to free up room for what I actually needed. Even though max capacity is only 32 items, when the game forced me to scroll through these items over and over again just to sell a couple of body purifiers, it got aggravating. Especially when I can buy multiple items all at the same time without getting kicked back to the first menu option after each purchase. Is it a small petty gripe? Sure, but it drove me nuts every time I was selling off items in every town I was in to make room in my inventory. The gang heads over to some ruins located in the other side of the Dragon's Forest where they meet the ghost of a former Dragoon, Shirley. Passing the kindly ghost challenge via a gimmick battle where the party must answer questions proving them worthy of a 4th Dragoon spirit, because apparently having 3 in their possession wasn't good enough reason to trust them with a 4th. But then again, Shirley's been dead for a while and probably was just trying to keep her new friends around for a little bit longer. It's not like she could offer them pizza rolls if they just hung out. Fast forward a little bit, the gang returns to Lohan with the cure for Shauna's poison problem, the Dragoon spirit of the White Silver Dragon. The doctor, impressed with the party's strength, suggests Dart enters the Heroes competition, which just happens to be held at the arena here in Lohan. With the dragon defeated and the Imperial forces shaken up at the moment, why not indulge in a little more controlled violence while awaiting the next big plot point to fall into our laps? One of the other combatants happens to be none other than Dart's former master, Haschel. Dart wins 4 easy rounds against the best Endiness has to offer, and it looks like he'll be pitted up against a sword master named Lloyd in the final round. Lloyd throws out some foreshadowing and proceeds to embarrass Dart in front of all his friends. Dart introduces his friends to Haschel, whom he met during his time looking for the Black Monster 4 years ago. Lavitz then decides to force Shauna and Dart into a little impromptu date where they play exciting carnival games like Who is the Man? It's just a version of the clamshell game, but with green dudes who hide a worm under their hat. After finishing up at the carnival, Lavitz presses Dart on if he made a move on Shauna during their date. At the gate of Lohan, a Knight of Bale pin-cushioned by arrows is able to tell Lavitz and the others that King Elbert has been taken prisoner by the Imperial Sandoran army and was taken to Hellena Prison. Lavitz freaks out a little, but Haschel calms him down. Back at Hellena, the party rushes in but are ambushed by the prison guards and promptly falls for the oldest trick in the book. The Jabba's Palace trapdoor leading to a Rancor trick. Sorry, that's a Django, not a Rancor. How could I have possibly gotten them confused? Dispatching the monster, the group makes their way to the top of the prison where they are just in time to stop Frugal from cutting off the king's head. I'm surprised that a man who would throw his own prison guards into a canyon had enough self-control to keep the king alive this long. Frugal isn't that hard of a boss, and once he's defeated, we see the man in the black hood wrist deep in Elbert's back, ripping out a glowing orb he calls the Moon Gem, an ancient Wingley artifact. And who is this mystery man excavating treasure from the king? It's Lloyd from the arena. You know, that swordsman who took our hero Dart to task? And of course, this isn't really a big surprise for anyone actually paying attention. Lloyd was there at Seles at the beginning of the game. He was lurking in Hellena as Dart rescued Shauna. He was pulling the strings in Bale when we first visited. Lloyd's been there the whole time.
I've been here the whole time.
Lavitz leaps at the hooded figure, but he unfortunately is caught by Lloyd's sword. Lavitz, the man who helped Dart free Shauna from this very prison at the beginning of the game, invited the party to his town to meet his king and to his home to meet his mother, who shared his vulnerabilities with Dart about his father and tried to steer Dart towards the unrequited love of Shauna is mortally wounded. Legend of Dragoon didn't need the big old will they won't they love story for me to love this character. I was shown a gentleman, a strong and loyal knight, and a true friend. Dart and Lavitz are able to share a few last words before he passes. His Jade Dragoon spirit transfers over to Elbert. Although blasted by the death of Lavitz, we aren't down a party member. Elbert takes up where Lavitz left off with his equipment, levels, and skills staying the same. Hiding in a wrecked basement back in Seles, Elbert tells the others what Lloyd stole from him. the Moon Gem, an ancient artifact from the Dragon campaign passed down to kings throughout the centuries. Assuming Lloyd is bringing this back to the Imperial Emperor Dole, the gang decides on the most logical course of action, going after the Emperor and Lloyd on their home turf, the Black Castle in Kazaz. The Black Castle is this dark, futuristic area unlike anything we've seen in Dragoon so far. Everything has this green hue that lights up the city streets, there are scientists doing research on what seems like a gate to hell, and some interesting garbage disposal methods. What I'm saying is that this city has quite the vibe. Also, this guy turns himself into a dog trying to harness the magical power of the Dragoon. As Dart and company approach Emperor Dole's throne room, they run into a familiar face with some sweet new duds, Kongol. And after kicking his giganto butt again, Kongol asks for a quick death, and even though Rose is more than happy to oblige, she is stopped by Shauna. And they spare the giant and move on to where the Emperor awaits. A little lore dump between Dole and Albert lets us know that the Emperor is Albert's uncle who killed his father, Carlo, 20 years ago and divided the country ever since. Kidnapping Shauna and the war we've been caught up in seem to be the plot of the late Emperor Diaz, presumed dead 11,000 years ago, now pulling strings behind the scenes with his loyal servant Lloyd. The battle with Dole is a pretty great way to end the first disc. He dual wields two big swords, his red armor and cape just look cool, and he's a tough cookie to boot. The battle starts off with Dole in human form, and if you remember my talk about elemental weaknesses from earlier, he's a thunder element character, which means he has no innate weaknesses to exploit. In his second phase, Dole turns into a Dragoon, but sadly for him, I have 3 Dragoons in my party, so Dole falls victim to the numbers game. Dole tells Albert and Dart that Lloyd is headed to the western continent of Timaroa. His Dragoon spirit is transferred to Hashel, and the war that kicked off Legend of Dragoon and divided a continent is over. Even at the close of Disc 1, the journey is just beginning, but that's where I'm going to leave the story for you to experience for yourself. That whole recap spanned about 13 hours of my total 55 hours of gameplay time. So LOD is not as big of a commitment as other JRPGs tend to be. And I did everything I could. I fought the secret Dragoon bosses and the hidden Mega Boss Faust. I also platinumed the game on PS4, but besides collecting the 50 Stardust, there wasn't much more to this straightforward trophy list. I did want to quickly mention the 3 other characters that join your party along the way, although I won't really spoil their involvement, secrets, or stories here. One of my favorite characters, Maru, a bubbly young lady who wields a giant hammer in battle. She gets so fast that later in the game she usually gets to take multiple turns before most enemies and allies take one. Miranda is one of the later additions to your party. She also uses a bow and arrow like Shauna, so I didn't find myself using her unless forced to. Since all my other characters have additions that can be leveled up, I never felt the need to use either of the bow users who got left in the rain during the addition party. And that pesky Giganto Kongol does eventually turn up again and joins the party, so it's good that Shauna convinced Rose to let him live back in Castle Black. Dragoon brings a deep world full of charming and troubled characters, a battle system that can hang with the best of them, and a fantastic soundtrack that you've been listening to in the background of this whole video. If you missed it on PS1, it's available on PS4 for those looking to add an amazing JRPG to their list of must-play classics. Maybe one day we'll see a sequel from Sony to this fantastic game, but until then, at least it's easily available on modern consoles. Thank you very much for watching. It's always appreciated that anyone would stick around to hear me ramble about JRPGs. I also do a series about earning my friends platinum trophies. There's one out now about Borderlands on the PS3, and another one in the works where I tackle the Tekken 6 platinum. I'm not good at fighting games, so hopefully you can enjoy my incompetence on that one soon. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.